The courtroom was already full long before the clock struck 10. People had arrived early, not out of respect for the law, but out of curiosity. Because today wasn't about justice. It was about power. Rows of seats filled with journalists, analysts, investors, and spectators who had followed the case for months. Notebooks ready. Cameras positioned. Eyes alert. A low hum of whispers floated through the air. Sharp, curious, restless. At the back wall, red recording lights blinked quietly. This wasn't just any trial. This was the kind of trial people talked about for years. A billionaire accused of financial fraud on a scale that had quietly destroyed lives, retirement funds wiped out, small investors ruined, entire companies destabilized. And yet, despite everything, despite the numbers, the patterns, the suspicions, nothing had stuck. No solid proof. No undeniable evidence. Just smoke. And a man who knew how to walk through it without getting burned. At exactly 10:02 a.m., the side door opened. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Everyone turned. Adrian Cole stepped in. Tailored suit. Perfect fit. Dark, understated, expensive without trying too hard. His expression was calm, almost bored, like a man attending a meeting he had already won. He didn't rush. He didn't acknowledge the cameras. He simply walked to his seat, pulled out his chair, and sat down. Controlled. Measured. Untouchable. His legal team followed, sharp suits, sharper eyes, carrying stacks of files that looked heavier than they actually were. Across the room, the prosecution sat in quiet contrast, less polished, more tired. Their files weren't neat, they were used. Pages bent at the edges, notes scribbled in margins, evidence that had been handled, questioned, doubted, fought with. And still not enough. Because in cases like this, truth isn't what matters. Proof is. And proof was missing. Near the far wall, almost blending into the background like a piece of furniture nobody questioned, an old janitor pushed a cleaning cart slowly across the floor. The wheel on the front right corner was slightly misaligned. Click, click, click. The sound was soft, but steady, repetitive, unimportant, exactly like him. His uniform was faded from years of washing. His posture slightly bent, not weak, just worn. His movements were careful, practiced. He didn't look at anyone. And no one looked at him, because people don't see what they don't value. He paused near the back row, dipped his mop into the bucket, squeezed it slowly, and continued. Click, click, click. At 10:05, the judge entered. Everyone stood. A wave of motion, synchronized, respectful, automatic. Then silence. Heavy, focused. The judge adjusted his robe, took a seat, scanned the room briefly. Be seated. Chairs slid back. The trial resumed. The defense stood first. Confident. Prepared. In control. Your Honor, the lead attorney began, his voice smooth and deliberate. Over the past several weeks, the prosecution has attempted to construct a narrative. He paced slowly, measured steps, carefully timed pauses. A narrative built not on facts, but on interpretation. He turned slightly toward the jury. Suspicion is not evidence. Assumption is not proof. A few subtle nods. Not dramatic. Just enough. Because confidence, when delivered correctly, feels like truth. And people trust what feels right. Across the room, the prosecution remained still. Listening. Waiting. Because they had heard all of this before. Different words. Same meaning. No proof. No case. Near the wall, the janitor wiped a section of the floor that was already clean. Once. Twice. 3 times. Not because it needed it, but because his timing had to be perfect. The defense attorney continued. The financial movements in question, he said, gesturing lightly, can be explained through standard corporate structuring practices. He smiled slightly. Controlled. Calm. Nothing illegal. Nothing hidden. Just misunderstood. A soft ripple of agreement moved through parts of the room. Because complexity is easy to hide behind. And very few people challenge what they don't fully understand. Click, click, click. The janitor moved again. Closer now. Still invisible. Still irrelevant. The prosecution's turn came. Their lead lawyer stood slowly. There was no confidence in his posture. Only wait. Your Honor, he began, flipping open a file he already knew by heart, while we acknowledge the absence of direct evidence. That word hung in the air. Absence. We cannot ignore the pattern of financial behavior that suggests, the defense interrupted gently, but does not prove. A pause. Short, but decisive. The prosecution didn't respond immediately. Because they couldn't. Because it was true. Suggests but does not prove. And in a courtroom, that difference changes everything. Minutes passed. Arguments circled. Points raised, countered, softened, dismissed. And slowly, almost invisibly, the outcome began to settle. Like dust after movement. Unavoidable. Final. The judge leaned back slightly. Proceed with final statements. There it was. The end. The defense didn't hesitate. They were ready for this part before the trial even began. Your Honor, the attorney said, voice firm but respectful, this case has been built on perception. He walked forward slightly. Not aggressive. Just present. But perception is not reality. A pause. Perfectly placed. My client stands before you today not as a criminal, but as a man misunderstood by complexity. He turned toward Adrian. Without evidence, there is no crime. Silence. Heavy. Settling. The prosecution stood again, but slower this time. Their energy was gone. Their fight finished before the words even left their mouth. They spoke. But no one leaned in. Because everyone already knew. This was over. Near the wall. The janitor stopped. The will clicked once more. And then, nothing. For the first time, since morning, the sound was gone. He stood still. Completely still. His hands resting lightly on the handle of the cart. His eyes no longer on the floor. They lifted. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward the front of the room. Toward the judge. And in that quiet space, between conclusion and decision, he spoke. Permission to speak. Your Honor. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Because something about it didn't belong. And when something doesn't belong in a place like that, everyone notices. Heads turned. Brows frowned. A few quiet scoffs. The defense attorney's expression tightened immediately. Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate. The judge raised a hand. Not quickly. Not sharply. But firmly enough to stop everything. Silence returned. Deeper this time. More focused. The judge looked at the old man. Really looked at him. Not as background. Not as staff. But as a person. On what grounds, he asked. The janitor didn't rush. Didn't stumble. Didn't apologize. He simply stepped forward. One step. Then another. Measured. Controlled. Because, he said quietly, I recorded everything. And just like that, the air in the room changed. Not dramatically. Not instantly. But undeniably. Because confidence, real confidence, doesn't ask for attention. It changes it. Adrian Cole's expression shifted. Slightly. Almost invisible. But enough. Because men like him don't react unless something matters. And this suddenly did. Adrian Cole's expression shifted. Slightly. Almost invisible. But enough. Because men like him don't react unless something matters. And this suddenly did. The courtroom held its breath. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just still. The judge leaned forward slightly. Explain, he said. The old janitor nodded once. Respectful. Calm. Certain. He reached into the inner pocket of his worn uniform. Not rushed. Not hesitant. And pulled out a small, old recording device. The kind no one pays attention to. The kind people forget exists. He placed it gently on the evidence table. I've worked in this building for 3 years, he said quietly. Cleaning offices, emptying bins, wiping floors after meetings ended. His eyes moved across the room. Not searching. Not nervous. Just observing. The kind of work people don't notice. A faint pause. But when people don't notice you, his gaze stopped on Adrian. They also don't hide from you. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Subtle. Uneasy. The defense attorney stepped forward immediately. Your Honor, this is completely inadmissible. Sit down. The judge said firmly. No anger. Just authority. The attorney sat. Slowly. For the first time. Without confidence. The janitor pressed a button. A soft static sound filled the room. Then, voices. Clear. Undeniable. Adrian Cole's voice. Relaxed. Unfiltered. Move the funds through the secondary accounts. By the time the audit hits, it'll be too late. Another voice. Nervous. And the paper trail? A slight chuckle. Adrian again. There won't be one. People only see what they're told to see. Silence. Instant. Heavy. Absolute. No whispers. No shifting. Just truth, sitting in the middle of the room where lies had been standing minutes ago. Adrian didn't move, but something behind his eyes collapsed. The defense attorney didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. You can argue facts. You can twist numbers. But you cannot argue with your own voice. The judge looked down at the device, then back at Adrian. Mr. Cole. A pause. Long enough to matter. Do you wish to respond? Nothing. No clever words. No legal maneuver. No confidence. Just silence. Because for the first time, Adrian Cole wasn't in control of the narrative. The courtroom air felt different now. Heavier. Real. The prosecution slowly stood. Not rushed. Not desperate anymore. Your Honor, he said, voice steady now, we request immediate review and submission of this evidence into the record. The judge nodded. Granted. That single word changed everything. Across the room, a quiet shift began. People who had been leaning back now leaned forward. People who had been certain now weren't. Because power doesn't disappear loudly. It fades. Right in front of you. Adrian's lawyer leaned toward him quickly, whispering urgently. But Adrian didn't respond. He was staring at the device, like a man looking at the exact moment his world ended. The judge raised the gavel. This court will take a brief recess for verification of newly submitted evidence. The sound echoed. Sharp. Final. But nobody moved. Because everyone already knew. This wasn't a pause. This was the collapse. Officers stepped forward quietly. Not aggressively. Not urgently. Because there was no resistance left to meet. Mr. Cole, one of them said, voice controlled. Please stand. Adrian didn't move at first. Not because he refused, but because he understood. Standing up now meant everything he built was gone. Slowly, he stood. The same man who had walked in untouchable now looked like every other man who realizes too late that he was never as safe as he believed. No cameras flashed. No one spoke. Because moments like this don't need noise. They speak for themselves. Across the room, the janitor stepped back, quietly, like he had done nothing extraordinary, like he had simply finished his job. The judge looked at him again, longer this time. State your name for the record. The old man straightened slightly, not proudly, just honestly. Daniel Reeves. A pause. Then he added, I used to be a forensic auditor. That word carried weight now. Real weight. I was part of the initial audit team, he continued calmly. I flagged irregularities, reported them. His eyes didn't leave Adrian. But I was asked to sign off anyway. A small silence. I refuse. The courtroom listened differently now. Not out of curiosity, but out of respect. They terminated my contract the next day. No emotion, just fact. But they forgot something. A slight tilt of his head. I was still there. Cleaning. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Because truth doesn't rush. It waits for the right moment. The judge nodded slowly. Your testimony will be recorded in full. Daniel gave a small nod. No smile. No satisfaction. Because this was never about revenge. It was about correction. The officers guided Adrian toward the exit. Step by step. The same room that had once felt like his territory now felt smaller, colder, real. As he reached the door, he paused. just for a second, not to speak, not to argue, but because somewhere deep down, he realized something most powerful people never do. He had been seen, not for his image, not for his wealth, but for the truth he tried to hide. And that was the one thing he could never control. The door opened, then closed behind him, and just like that, the man who controlled everything, controlled nothing. Silence remained. Not empty, not awkward, but meaningful. Because some moments don't need reaction. They need understanding. Daniel Reeves turned back to his cart, picked up the handle, adjusted the loose wheel slightly, and began to walk. Click, click, click. The same sound, the same pace. But something had changed. People moved aside for him now. Not because he asked, but because they understood. Respect isn't demanded. It's revealed. He reached the door, paused briefly, then walked out, unnoticed, for the last time, because some people don't need titles, or money, or power, to change everything. They just need patience, and the courage to wait, until the truth speaks for itself.